Our name is Ghosts Want You Dead. Today, though, ghosts are just happy to be here.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm back.
You weren't
Oh, I was here. I thought I was gone because I didn't do it, even though I listened and participated.
You weren't
But
gone. You just didn't watch the show because you didn't have time.
Yeah, I had a busy couple of weeks.
You could have had time, but then we would have been recording until 4 o'clock in the morning, so it was better the other way.
Yes.
And I could test if you really pay attention to me, if you knew what was going on this week after having missed 5 episodes.
I
But
did. I knew.
we're back.
We're
We
back.
both watched the show, and we did it in the same room, physically together.
We did. It was very
Not
fun.
remote. It is more fun to record in person.
It is. It's a good time.
We've hung out all day, which is rare. We don't
have.
normally anymore spend a lot of time together outside of the podcast. So we have our standing Friday night date that this week is Saturday, but we went to some thrift stores and we had lunch.
We did.
And we got Becca's oil change.
We did, which is saying something because I'm a little ADHD gremlin and don't ever do nothing I'm supposed to do. I was how many miles behind?
I don't.
It was a lot, but
I drive an electric car, so thinking about oil changes and such is beneath
it
me.
is. You're so much better than me and my gas guzzling. Guzzle, guzzle, guzzle. But yes, no, we've had a pleasant time under some somewhat sad circumstances. One of the reasons why I've been so busy is my wonderful 96-year-old grandmother passed away last week. And so we've been arranging everything for services. And today, Matthew and I were doing some funeral clothes shopping.
We are taking a little podcast field trip to Grandma's funeral this week. And we're going to have a little slumber party in a little hotel just about a little over an hour away from where we are, so we don't have to drive back and forth twice.
It's kind of like a sad vacation, though, because Matthew and I are both busy, and he's a house husband and student, and I have a kiddo, so it is going to be pleasant to get away, but also
I'm going to force her to podcast.
Yes, I probably will.
While we're at Grandma's funeral, we are also... Now, bear in mind, this is not the official launch of our Patreon. However, we have launched the Patreon.
We have.
Resurrected a long-dead Patreon that I used to have for my music projects, which I don't think I've said on this podcast, but I do music.
We have done music for the people.
Yes, but we didn't remark on it.
No, we were just like, here,
sprung a musical number on them out of nowhere.
Well.
And that won't be the only time.
Dun, dun, dun.
But anyway, I resurrected my old music Patreon, and now it's a podcast Patreon, patreon.com/ghostswantyoudead. I have been affectionately referring to it as Ghosts Want Your Money.
They do.
And we do, yeah. We are fundraising both to cover hosting costs, because thus far we have been paying out of pocket for the privilege of addressing you each week, and we would like to not necessarily have to do that. Also, we have aims to get some better recording equipment, so sound is not a constant struggle for us, which I'm sure you would appreciate if our sound was consistent and good.
Would be.
Which we could make happen with a few of your dollars. But most importantly, we are fundraising because we want to go to the 60th anniversary of the Dark Shadows television program. which is this summer in Los Angeles.
Ghosts want to go to LA.
And we need about $2,000 to make it
We
happen.
do.
And we are poor people. So sign up. Anyway, we should talk about this show before we get tired and tired of each other. Uh, so, episode 121, Victoria Winters tries to remind us that she's still in creep jail, but we can't understand her through that damn dag. The scene of Vicky calling to David from creep jail that we discussed last week is replayed, but this time, not only do we see Matthew creepily returning to the old house, we see him catch David looking at the bookshelf and asking it who's there. Opening credits. Matthew is suspicious, but pleased that David has brought him Mrs. Johnson's cigarettes, although he yells at him and tells him not to steal things anymore because that could somehow get them both in trouble. Matthew is suspicious, but pleased at the cigarettes, as we said. And he also wants to know what David was doing near the bookshelf. David quickly says, "Oh, I heard something and I thought it was you, so I was yelling for you to try and find out where you are." Matthew assures him that he was imagining things, and he lights one of Mrs. Johnson's cigarettes and tells David he should just forget all of this, and they go back and forth about it for a while, and then David says, "Oh, well, I think I know what it was," and Matthew's like, "Oh, shit,
Oh,
you
yeah.
do? Oh,
What?
no." And
And he says that it must have been ghosts. And Matthew laughs at him and pretends that he's right. And he laughs and says, "Yes, this house is full of ghosts and ghosts to be." Matthew is terrifying. Like, he genuinely frightens me. I looked up and saw his creepy, dark shadowed face, and I was like, ugh, scary man. Get away, little kid, forgetting that David is also a little creep.
back at the main house, Mrs. Johnson enters the drawing room and asks Liz if it's okay if she cleans in there, and Liz allows it, but Mrs. Johnson immediately sets in speechifying about how Vicky must be dead and Matthew is crazy and scary. Liz tells her to stop being morbid. So, of course, Mrs. Johnson insists that death is still hanging about.
Just then, Sheriff George is at the door and wants to see Mrs. Stoddard, and Mrs. Johnson wants to know if he's found Vicky, and he insists that he's here to see Liz, and Mrs. Johnson says, "Well, that means you haven't found him." And then she starts talking all kinds of shit on the police department and is mad that there's a killer loose and they suck at their jobs. And here, ACAB, Mrs. Johnson. But also it's funny because she's just like, those cops, they don't know what they're doing. And it's real cute. She takes Sheriff George into the drawing room, and Liz is there. And George and Liz talk about how Mrs. Johnson's a pistol, and George knows her well enough to not take it personally.
A small correction, Mrs. Johnson does not lead him into the drawing room. She's still nagging him about
Oh,
being
you're
bad at his
correct.
job. And Liz comes out to be like, "Oh, come on, George, leave that crazy lady alone."
Okay.
Liz dismisses her and asks her to close the doors behind her as if to be like, "Fucking just stop it already, lady."
Yeah,
And
she's
she might be regretting having hired her at this point. So once they're alone, or no, he might have said this before Mrs. Johnson gets sent away, but he tells either them or just Liz that he's reasonably certain that Matthew isn't around Collinwood anymore, but he is going to have just a few men search again just to be sure. And Liz asks, how likely is it that Matthew might have Vicky? And George admits that, yeah, he may very well, and he's unpredictable, so who knows what he might do. And we can see on Liz's face that she feels guilty. George asks her for a photo of Vicky, and Liz says, "Oh, well, Carolyn took some recently, so I'll go get it." And she starts off to fetch one, but stops and asks George to tell her frankly if he has much hope for Vicky, to which he just says no. So everybody thinks Vicky is dead.
Yeah. David is creeping in, and Mrs. Johnson comes in, and he knows the sheriff's there by the hat on the table. Because again, I guess no one uses the closet that we didn't know was there. But Mrs. Johnson takes this opportunity to tell David about how the police are nothing but lazy pigs going to lunch.
George is fat and dumb,
Yeah.
and they haven't made any progress in locating Vicky. But more importantly than all of that, she has a question for David, and he tries to get away, but she's not having it, so she demands to know if he took her cigarettes. He denies any knowledge of the whereabouts of her cigarettes.
And he's also like, are you supposed to be smoking while working?
She doesn't believe him when he denies it, and so she checks his fingers to see if he's been smoking. And David has learned some tricks from Roger and is being mean and classist about it,
It's pretty good. He says, if I wanted cigarettes, I wouldn't steal them. I'd just buy them. And he saunters off like the little rich brat he
as
is.
if to say, I have money, unlike
Yeah,
some
some
people.
people. And he goes into the drawing room and says hi to Sheriff George. And Sheriff George asks David if he's broken any laws recently, speeding on his bicycle, etc. And David's like, nah, just harboring a dangerous fugitive. Sheriff George says he thinks someone might be hiding Matthew. And they talk about it. And George tells David what the consequences would be.
Well, first he leads in with, if someone is hiding him, I'm scared for that person because he's crazy and unpredictable and might hurt them. Then he further scares David by telling him that also whoever is hiding Matthew is going to rot in jail.
And he's like, you mean whoever is hiding Matthew will go to jail? Yeah, he's pretty freaked out by that. And Liz comes in and
George excuses himself.
Liz comes in and says she wishes there was something more she could do. And George kind of flirts and says, I wish there was something more I could do for you. And it was kind of cute. Other than fuck the police, I kind of ship Liz and George.
And then David asks Liz to confirm what George has said about whoever might be hiding Matthew going to jail. And she agrees and says, well, whoever's hiding Matthew is doing a bad thing and they deserve to go to jail. He also asks if Matthew might kill Vicky, and Liz doesn't want to talk about this and tries to get him to shut up and go away, but he also asks Liz if she knows any secrets about the old house, say particularly maybe the walls in the old house. And she wants to know why, and he just says, oh, no reason. And she's like, well, that's stupid, and just dismisses him. And he leaves, but Mrs. Johnson corners him on his way out and yells at him about her cigarettes.
Yeah, he's
some
give me
more.
those cigarettes, and he's like, fuck off, old lady, and then heads out, essentially. In the old house, Matthew is lurking around and moving things in front of the secret room. He's moved a shelf. David comes in and tells Matthew he's talked to the sheriff and that they're gonna leave, that the sheriff is gonna leave and they're gonna search a different place. And Matthew says that's good, and he starts talking about leaving, and David says that he has to stay, and he's like, oh yeah, sure, I'm staying, kid. And
After David explains that the coast is clear, Matthew starts to talk about leaving, but then placates David by saying he's not leaving. David asks Matthew where he hides because he was looking and he was nowhere, and then he just suddenly appeared. Matthew tells David that the sheriff was just trying to scare him, and that's not true. And who are you going to believe, that pig or your best creepy friend? So David starts to leave, but wants to make sure that Matthew is not going to rat on him if he happens to get caught. Then we get the end credits. Episode 122.
Victoria Winters tells us that it's sunny out, but I don't know how she could tell because she's locked in a secret room in the old house, and David suspects she's locked in there, but he's a brat, so who knows if he'll save her.
Just outside the bookshelf, Matthew assures David that no, he won't go to jail and you ought to go home before anybody starts looking for you. On his way out, David glances once more at the bookshelf, and this freaks Matthew out, who immediately demands to know why. He tells him again that it's just ghosts back there, nothing to worry about, and David agrees, and each of them know that he is lying, but they proceed with the interaction anyway. Opening credits.
Oh, also, they cut to Vicky tied up with her gag because, oh, it must be ghosts. And he's like, well, that must be the only explanation. And then cut to poor Vicky tied up and gagged.
After the opening credits, Matthew finally shoos David away and tells him not to come back unless he has to. David says he'll return when the sheriff's men have gone and he'll bring more food then, and Matthew expresses his creepy gratitude. After
It's creepy.
he is.
Just so creepy.
After David leaves, Matthew rejoins Vicky in creep jail and yells at her for making noise on purpose and that he ought to break her neck.
She says she wasn't calling out to him that what did she say she was doing?
She says that she heard a noise and it scared her, and so she screamed.
That's right. She's trying to convince him that David isn't reliable anyway and he should just leave, and he's frantically pacing and he doesn't know what his plan is. She's trying to be smart about it and manipulate him, but he is kind of just a loose cannon. Back in the drawing room, Carolyn calls Burke and he asks if they have found Vicky. Also, he's hot with that stubble situation going on. Like, how do you feel about that?
You liked him in his little robe
I
with his
did.
turtleneck under a robe.
I did. I was like, why is it a turtleneck? Why can't we see a little bit of titty? I want some Burke titties.
On the phone, Carolyn reports that the sheriff could not find Vicky and has left, only leaving a few men behind. But Carolyn goes on to say she didn't call about Vicky.
She wants to talk about us.
She called to report that she had fights with both Liz and Roger, who told her that she shouldn't see him anymore. And Burke doesn't want to talk about it because he's expecting another call, and her feelings are clearly
she's
hurt, but she
dejected.
agrees.
Yeah, she's dejected, but agrees to talk about it another time.
And she paces and pulls faces until David enters, asking where Liz is. And Carolyn says that she's upstairs and he shouldn't bother her because she's resting, and also so is Roger. In the absence of any grown-ups to talk to, David asks Carolyn if she thinks that Matthew would or could hurt Vicky. Carolyn says she never thought so, but then he killed Bill, and now she isn't so sure about that. David then suggests that maybe Roger is behind all of the attempts on Vicky's life. Carolyn calls him a monster for talking about his dad like that. David says, no, maybe he's just smarter than the rest of them, and he tries to argue, but Carolyn doesn't want to argue with him, and she's just like, yeah, sure, David, whatever you say, just get out of my face.
Yeah.
But then they scuffle a little bit when Carolyn mentions that Vicky is most likely dead, and this upsets David, and he makes an upset face at the camera just to make sure we know.
He's upset.
Back in Burke's room, he is on the phone trying to reach Blair, and he's trying to leave a message, And canonically, the character is tired at this point and has said, I haven't slept in like
It's
2 days.
true.
So maybe this was a performance choice and not him flubbing the line, but he's trying to say, tell him to contact Burke Devlin immediately, but he says instead, tell him to contact Burke Devlin.
He says contract Bert.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he goes, contact Burke Devlin.
Who knows if that was deliberate? I think we all know that it probably
I
wasn't.
don't think it was,
but
but it's one of
it
those that it
works.
worked out. Yeah. But he sits down exhausted, and then David is at the door, and he's like, Jesus, these Collins kids I'm manipulating sure are annoying me today. Like, he did seem annoyed, but he answers the door, and David says it's urgent, and they sit down, and David is trying to say that Roger might have killed Bill, and what if Matthew's innocent?
Well, he has reasoning behind it. He asks Burke if he still thinks that Roger did the manslaughtering 10 years ago. Because if he did, I know recently Matthew told him, well, you can't trust people that have killed. They could kill again.
Yeah, that's true.
And David parrots that and says, well, if my dad did that manslaughtering, that means he could kill again. So that means he probably killed Bill and probably tried to kill Vicky. So what if he did all of that and Matthew is innocent? And he implores Burke to tell him that Matthew is innocent and everything ever is Roger's fault. But Burke doesn't want to go into the past, and David's disappointed and says, I thought you were different. I thought I could tell you. And Burke asks, tell me what? But as David starts to answer, the phone rings and it's Blair. And Burke is more interested in telling Blair his banker
I think
hire
Blair-
private investigators to.
I don't know that
Find
he
Vicky.
is his banker. I think he may be
Well, I mean,
just his like assistant. Like,
he's always been introduced as a banker.
he hangs up and turns to David, but David is gone. And he calls out, but he's already left. So he sits down on the sofa and
Burke doesn't try too hard to
yeah,
go
he's like,
after him.
David, okay, well, fuck this. And just sits down and puts his hands in his face and is just tired. Back in the old creepy secret room in Creep Jail, Matthew is falling asleep, but says he can't sleep because she might call out and try to get found. And she's falling asleep too, and he puts the gag in her mouth and lies down.
And she doesn't resist at all. She's just like, fucking shut up and we can both go to
Yeah,
sleep.
just
Just
fine.
put the gag on me, whatever. So Matthew lays down and hears a voice calling,
Matthew, Matthew, Matthew,
yes?
Matthew.
Oh, that Matthew. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, haunting, hollering for him. And he calls out wildly, who's there? And it wakes up Vicky, who's like, God damn it, I can't even sleep in this horrible creep jail. And
he asks Vicky, where are those voices coming from? And she didn't hear anything. And is just like, what? And he calls her a liar and threatens to kill her again if she
Yes.
makes a sound.
And he does choke her again at some point there too.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, she's like, what voices? And he's like, no, you heard them. It's not my imagination. And he screams at her and chokes her again. He listens at the door, and then we see Josette's glowing painting trick and hear some ghost refrain from the music.
And so Matthew heads out of the secret room to investigate, and he looks around and hears some more.
Matthew, Matthew, Matthew.
The voice announces itself this time as Josette Collins, and then she starts up with her glowing
yeah.
stick again.
It's me, Josette Collins, and he runs back into the secret room and says, "Surely Vicky heard it this time," and she did not. All she heard was his shouting, and
He tells her what happened,
yeah,
and is like, well, and
the
they were
painting was
talking to me,
talking
and
to me,
then the painting was lit up, and she just tells him that he's real tired and must have imagined it.
and he's like, "Well, I'll show you,"
And
and drags her out.
but he's trying to show her the spooky portrait, but it is not glowing anymore. Matthew is losing his shit. He accuses Vicky of thinking he's going crazy, to which Vicky's face is like, well.
Yeah. But she's like, "Oh, yeah, sure, I heard him this time." And he's like, "No, you didn't. You're just placating me. You think I'm crazy." And
He,
she's like, "Well, of course, murdering madman, you're not crazy. You were just sleeping and you dreamed it all." And he's like, "Yeah, that must be."
but he's still crazy and creepy and
Yeah.
drenched in sweat, and the score intensifies as we zoom in on the portrait of Josette before the end credits. Episode 123
Victoria Winters.
reminds us that she is fucking tired of being in creep jail. Also, Matthew is going crazier and crazier by the minute and also seeing ghosts.
Yep, both and.
In the
He's-
old house, Matthew is pacing in front of Josette's portrait,
And
waiting for something to happen.
he's talking to himself about it and trying to alleviate his fears, like it's just a painting. And then he starts screaming and talking to the painting and like, "Why are you being a ghost at me?" It was wild.
And she glows at him some more, and it freaks him out, and he runs away scared outside.
That's
Then
pretty good.
there's a theremin sting before the opening credits. Over at the restaurant at the inn, Maggie is cleaning a table.
What a happy palate cleanser, sweet Maggie. Just been shining bright, sweet girl that Maggie is. I love
always
Maggie.
nice to see her.
Always.
And Joe comes in and they flirt a bit while Maggie asks for the gossip about the hunt for Vicky. And Maggie also brings up Carolyn, to which Joe announces that they have broken up. Maggie cutely, performatively pretends to be sad about that,
Yeah.
while smiling bigger than anyone has ever smiled.
Grinning ear to ear, like, sweet.
And she wants the gory details, and at first, Joe tries to be discreet about it, like, oh, well, let's just say it didn't work out, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
we're off our Christmas card lists or whatever. And Maggie asks, like, "Well, is it only for a season? Because y'all have broken up before." But he says it's permanent. And she kind of pointedly says, like, "So you're done, your days climbing the social ladder are over." And Joe takes offense to that and is like, "Is that really what you think of me?" And she says she didn't mean it that way. And
It's fine, they're fine,
yeah,
nobody's mad.
no one's
And
mad.
as I said, she's prying for details, and Joe tries to demur at first, and then immediately tells the story of finding Carolyn in Burke's room, like he was trying to be a gentleman for a second, but then was like, let me tell you, she's a fucking slut.
Yeah, she was in there doing all kinds of things. Oh, but Maggie makes a fun threesome joke because I didn't write that down though, but what you said reminded me of it because she goes, "Well, how did you know she was there?" And he was like, "I was there too." And she's like, "Oh, cheeky." Like she says something. She's like, "Oh, well, what kind of situation was that? I wonder."
She's teasing him a little bit about him embarrassing himself in Burke's room when he tried to start a little fight, and it's cute. But then, while this conversation is happening, a mysterious woman we haven't seen before enters.
She is very mysterious looking.
And she's wearing a trench coat and a hat, and the music is suspenseful, and this lady is staring vacantly into the distance. Maggie and Joe are both staring at her like, who's this lady?
Joe says she looks familiar.
Over at Collinwood, outside, we see David creeping up to the old house just after Matthew has gone back in after he got a scared of the ghost. Matthew is regarding Josette's portrait suspiciously before he retreats to creep jail, and then David comes in with the bag of food in hand and he's yelling for Matthew, and he yells in the front room, and then he yells up the stairs, and then he yells down a hall, and then he yells down a different hall, and Matthew doesn't respond to any of this. So then David approaches the bookshelf.
And as Matthew is straining to listen, he accidentally knocks over a candlestick. And of course, David hears this and
He does yell for Matthew one more time
yeah,
after that, but then just goes out the front door.
but doesn't leave.
Instead of leaving, he creeps over to look in the window.
Yes.
And he watches Matthew emerge from creep jail and look around like a little groundhog coming out of
Yeah.
its hole.
Is what it reminded me of. Little mole man. Matthew comes to the window where David was peeking in, but David quickly hid to the side because David is good at hiding. That's
yeah,
the
it's
thing
a
he does.
fun shot of we see scary Matthew looking out the window and then
David
David flat against the wall outside the window,
next to
just
the
like
shutter, yeah.
6 inches from Matthew's face.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It is fun. And then we head back over to the restaurant where Maggie approaches the mysterious stranger and offers her a menu. And then Joe and Maggie are speculating about who this lady might be because Joe swears that she's familiar. But then they return to the story about Carolyn slutting around town because Maggie's more interested in that gossip. And Joe also gives her the details about Burke seemingly being more interested in Vicky than he is in Carolyn. And
Maggie thinks he's just a ladies' man in general and more interested in the ladies than any one particular lady.
Maggie also gives Joe his coffee on the house out of pity for his embarrassing breakup. So Joe leaves and Maggie offers the strange woman a cup of coffee, doing her jokey waitress banter that she's good at.
Yeah.
And the woman follows her back to the counter and asks for a glass of water, and then immediately starts interrogating her and is like, how long have you worked here? Well, what about Grace? Does she still work here? And Maggie says, no, I replaced her 5 years ago. And then the woman reveals that she is from Collinsport. She's just been away for a long time.
And she talks about the town and how it's the same spooky fog and seagulls, and she's being all spooky and mysterious as she talks about it.
Yes, she poetically poo-poos Collinsport.
That's nice.
She tells Maggie that she just got back in after being away for a few years and begins to ask questions about the Collinses. First Liz and then Roger. Maggie says, yes, Liz is still here and probably always will be, and Roger is still a dick. Perhaps more a dick than ever now.
Yeah, and she asks after David, and the way she's asking, it's clear to me that she's probably David's mother, like, because we've heard tale of that, and she when that was said, I definitely speculate that that's what's going on. But then, not only was it the way she's asking, but then Maggie talks some shit on David and is like, "Yeah, putting him in a dungeon would do him some good." And mystery woman makes a mad face, like, "Fucking, why would you lock that child up?" Seems to be defending a child that if she was gone 10 years ago, she had never met. So I was like, that's
Well,
probably.
she contradicted herself
Yeah.
because she said that she remembers David from when he was a baby.
Yeah.
but then also said that she's been gone for 10 years, but that's not really a contradiction if that's his mother,
Yeah.
because they did leave Collinsport and they lived
Mhm.
somewhere else. I forget where. It
Yeah.
wasn't Bangor, it was somewhere
I don't
else.
remember the
It
other
was
place. But either way,
Portland,
I think
maybe.
maybe it was Portland. But yes, so she seems like that's probably what they're putting down. Seems kind of far away and dreamy and
She tells Maggie she isn't even sure if she should be here, and maybe like it was a mistake coming back, and the score gets mysterious again, and the lady just goes back to her table and doesn't want to talk to Maggie anymore.
back at the old house, Matthew's lurking, which is really only thing he does unless he's screaming or strangling, and about to open the door, and David is coming in with food, and Matthew accuses him of snooping, and he's like, "No, I was just looking for you and bringing you this food." And even though he knows the secret about the secret room, he taunts him and asks how he got there when he was just looking for him and he wasn't here, but then suddenly he is. And then Matthew grabs his arm and screams at him, and David is like, "Ow, you're hurting me." And David at that point is like, "I should probably go." But David is like, "No, you're up to something. What are you up to?" And he's worried he's going to double cross him. And David goes ahead and does leave while he's hollering around, or goes to leave. Anyway, he's worried he's going to double cross him. And
He threatens that if he does, he'll definitely go to jail, like he
yes.
was worried about. And he's being creepy, and David is clearly scared. So finally, he gets out of there, and Matthew hurries to the window to watch him go. Then he takes inventory of the bag of food that David brought and says, "Oh, I'll have to go get some water."
Yeah, he pulls out an egg. I presume he wants to boil.
Outside, David hears Matthew leave, and he's watching hidden in some shrubbery in the woods. As soon as he's sure Matthew is gone, he, of course, immediately returns to the old house and goes right to the bookshelf and opens it, and his jaw drops in shock when he sees, but we don't see, Vicky in the secret room. End credits.
Episode 124. Victoria Winters tells us it's dusk and she's imprisoned, but David has found her.
We see David discovering her again, but this time we see her and they talk. So he asks why she's there, like it's her choice, like she's hiding out with Matthew on purpose or something. And he removes her gag and asks if she's all right. And she says, "Well, yes, I am all right, but we need to get the fuck out of here right now, because if he comes back, he's going to kill the both of us." And David looks real shocked at this before the opening credits, and then tells Vicky, "Oh no, he wouldn't do that. I know him, and he's my best friend, and he wouldn't try and hurt anybody." And Vicky's like, "Well, he has locked me up in this secret room and told me verbally that he will kill me.
He's like, "Oh, he's just doing that to scare you so you won't tell on him." Like,
He just doesn't want to get in trouble."
yeah,
And so Vicky asks him to untie her, and at first he does try. He's trying to get the knots untied, but they're just too tight for him, and they hear a noise from outside. So David goes to investigate, and it's just the shutters blowing in the wind of the coming storm. And Vicky mentions that, okay, when we get back to the house, I'm
yeah,
going
she's
to
gonna
call
call
the
the sheriff.
sheriff just as soon as we get in there. And that's when David stops trying to untie the
And
knots.
he's
And
like, "I'm not going to jail, lady."
pretty much he tells her, like, "Well, if I get you out of here, then you don't need the cops anymore." So David is afraid he's going to get into trouble. So he starts for the door, and he's freaking out pretty similarly to Matthew. can't decide what to do, and she's trying to influence him, and he's like, just shut up, don't talk to me. And then he runs away, ultimately leaving Vicky captive to avoid getting himself into trouble. Back in the restaurant, Mystery Lady looks mysterious, and Maggie checks on her, observing that she isn't eating her food, which is rude of a waitress, but we all know Maggie is nosy.
Yeah.
And Mystery Lady is like, I don't know why I came in here anyway. And then she asks more questions about Roger and says, but don't let me make a gossip of you. And we
Maggie's like,
tackled.
oh, we did. And Maggie's like, girl, you can't make me something I am already. Spill the tea, ask away, let's get to business. Like she pulls up a chair and she's just like, let's do this. This is what I live for.
And Maggie tells an abridged version of the story of Burke and Roger and the manslaughtering.
And when she says Burke's name, you can tell Mystery Lady is shocked.
And Maggie asks the woman if she knows Burke, and she says, oh, well, I did a long time ago. And so Maggie fills her in and is like, well, did you know that he's filthy fucking rich now and also staying in this very hotel? Would you like his room number? She's telling everybody
Everybody's
everything.
business. I know it. I love it.
And Maggie asks the woman, well, how well did you know Burke Devlin, Burke Devlin, Burke Devlin? And she
She's like,
says,
well enough.
which Maggie giggles at and is like, well, that makes sense on account of him being a dick. And the woman lights a cigarette and was like, really? He didn't used to be back when I knew him. And she eventually reveals that she has come to Collinsport, Maine from Arizona. And Maggie fantasizes about getting away from Collinsport someday. The woman tells her, well, I came from Phoenix, Arizona, and then begins to tell Maggie all about the legend of the Phoenix. And she's extolling the virtues of rebirth after a shitty past and is getting pretty weird, but Maggie takes it in stride and is like, sure, lady.
Saying it all very mysterious and wistful and like an oracle of some sort. And
But yeah, Maggie's fine with all that. And she's trying to get details out of the lady, like, who are you and where'd you leave and where have you been and why are you back? And
she answers some and then eventually is like, I think I'll take some more coffee. Like, please leave me alone.
yeah, she asks for more coffee to shut Maggie up. And also, suddenly the storm has broken out. And back outside the old house, Matthew finds David creeping around in the woods and he asks where he's coming from, suspecting that he had been back at the old house. But David pretends he was just lost, and Matthew doesn't buy this at all because he knows that David wanders around these woods all the time and knows them backwards and forwards. So Matthew grabs him by the arm again, and David struggles to get away, but Matthew starts dragging him back toward the old house. David pleads to go home and promises that he won't tell anybody, but Matthew gets upset because David is scared of him, and so that makes him scarier, and he starts to violently drag him away. But David wriggles free, and Matthew runs after him. Back in the restaurant, Mystery Lady is drinking her coffee as horrible old Sam comes in.
Oh, Sam, yeah. Yes, Sam it comes in and I believe she notices Sam, the mystery lady notices Sam and appears to sort of turn away as not to be seen a little bit. Like she's like, "Oh, that guy," which I mean, fair. It's Sam.
Well, Sam sits down at the counter and Maggie pours him coffee. He is hungover and feeling sorry for himself, and Maggie wants to know if he's painted anything today, and he tells her that he tried but didn't. And Then he tries to lie, saying, "But I did do some sketching. Here, look at this one." And he shows her a sketch that she has already seen, and she is disappointed, and he is embarrassed. And he talks about grand plans of all these things he's going to paint. Maggie suggests that maybe they ought to just leave town, and Sam resists, but Maggie suggests, "What about beautiful Phoenix, Arizona?" And he's like, "Whatever gave you that idea?" And she points out the mystery woman who is from here. Sam regards the woman suspiciously, asking, "Who's that? She looks familiar." And Maggie says, "Oh, I don't know. She's a guest at the hotel." And she says she's from here, but has been gone for about 10 years. Sam mutters to himself, "No, couldn't be." And he kind of trails off. So Maggie goes on to tell him all about all the questions the lady asked and suggests, well, if she looks familiar, why don't you go talk to her? But he's reluctant. And so Sam tells Maggie that she should find out her name and then let him know, but he runs away.
Yeah.
And we go back to Creep Jail where
Vicky's trying to get loose. She's been trying to loosen up her cuffs and or her ropes, and then Matthew is coming in, and he comes into the secret room and asks how she got her gag off, and she lies, and he doesn't buy it and is freaked out that David was there, and he decides he's going to kill her, and he's got to do it now. Like, well, he doesn't say kill her, but he's like, I know what I have to do, and I've got to do it now. And at the time, I thought he meant kill her, but then yeah, go ahead.
back at the main house, David is running around frantically yelling, "Father! Father!" which is a nice bookend to Mother. Mother. But no one answers his calls. End credits. Speaking, the end credits spoil the identity of the mystery woman
It is, in
as
fact,
Laura
Mother.
Collins. Yeah. Mother has arrived. She is
Mystery
back
Mother,
in
Mother.
town.
Mother. I know we did that before, but I
Yeah.
still love that song.
Episode 125, Victoria Winters reminds us that she is still in creep jail, and Matthew is probably going to kill her unless, of course, David actually tells someone that he knows she's in there. Back at the main house, David is still running around calling out for Father, who eventually comes down and answers, and as always, Roger is annoyed to be bothered, but David insists on talking to him, and Roger explains that he's busy securing all the windows before the storm comes, and he's got to finish up here and get to the greenhouse to do the same. But Roger finally agrees to listen when David insists that it is very important. Opening credits.
Then Roger is like, okay, well, what is it? Spit it out. And David says he has to promise that he won't get in trouble first. And Roger's like, well, what have you done now, you little shit? Like, he's like, oh dear. And he says, or, and David says that if Roger doesn't promise, then he will regret it. And he's not going to tell him. Roger is over it and just sends him to bed and goes to secure the greenhouse. And David is funny and angry and vindictive, like he likes to be, like father like son, or like Roger like David. And David says, I hope you catch pneumonia and die. And that's pretty fun.
Roger is annoyed, but not as mad as he ought to be because David is so low on his list of priorities that he is more concerned about the greenhouse windows.
Yeah, exactly.
Roger exits, and David says out loud that he just doesn't know what to do. Back in Creep Jail, Matthew repeats his evil plans to Vicky that he's going to take her with him as he flees, and she isn't real into this idea, but there's a banging noise, and Matthew starts to freak out. But Vicky says, oh, it's just the shutters. And Matthew is paranoid, insisting that someone is outside, but Vicky says no, it's just your imagination. But he insists that he feels a presence.
He opens the door and looks around, and no one is there. And he starts talking crazy talk at Vicky about how his enemies are everywhere and he knows she's his enemy and he thinks he might have to kill her and kill all of his enemies and enemies and
She tells him, well, you don't want to do
yeah, she
that.
tries to convince him they're friends and she's like, I want to help and cooperate and be friends and I'll stay with you as long as you want. And he paces back and forth and is tired and crazy and can't remember what he was going to do. And Vicky says, oh, you were leaving. And so he gags her again and goes to put the food in the car and to pull it up to the house. And then they're going to take off.
He says he's pulling the car around and he'll be right back for her. And we head back over to the main house. In the foyer, we get another clock close up like they like to do.
They do like looking at the clocks.
The clock is striking 11 p.m., and David creeps around the dark drawing room. He walks into the foyer, and then a voice beckons, David! And he looks around, puzzled for a second, before the ghost of Bill Malloy appears and tells David repeatedly, Help, Miss Winters! And Roger enters, and David explains what's just happened, and Roger dismisses it as nonsense and insists that he go to bed. And David doesn't want to, so Roger drags him upstairs by the arm. Outside, Ghost Bill calls out to Matthew, but just in case there were some other Matthews wandering the grounds of Collinwood in the night, he has to specify Matthew Morgan.
Yes.
And the ghost voice reveals himself as Bill. Bill tells Matthew that someone at Collinwood will die tonight.
Yeah, he says, someone will die, someone will die, someone will die. And he spins around all ghostly like and disappears. And Matthew is freaking out. And back at the main house, David is creeping downstairs in his robe and PJs to go make a call. He has called Burke and he leaves a message and says to come to Collinwood right away and to say that it's urgent and to say that it's about Miss Winters.
Back in Creep Jail, Vicky finally manages to wriggle out of her bindings and she removes her gag. She starts to sneak out the front door, of course, right as Matthew is coming in the front door. And at first, he kind of casually remarks, Oh, you look scared. There's no reason for that. And he's confused. And he thinks that she is Liz. And Vicky is like, oh shit, he's totally lost it now.
Yeah,
but
Liz
she
goes
plays along.
bonkers and thinks she's Liz and
So Liz, she pretends to be. And
Yeah.
she's like, yep, that's me, Liz.
yep, I'm going to bed. You should too, okay? like,
Good night.
good night. and tries to leave, but then he's like, wait. And she's like, shit. And
He slowly starts to realize what's
Yeah.
going on. At first, he still thinks
He's like,
she's Liz.
wait, we're in the old house. Why are we in the old house? And she's like, oh, well, we were looking for David, but he isn't here. And he starts regaining his memory of the ghost bill. And she says that it was all a dream. And he then remembers that she's Vicky. And
He grabs her and manhandles her back to Creep Jail.
yeah.
Back at the main house, we see Burke outside banging on the door, and Roger runs downstairs in the foyer looking adorable in his PJs and is just furious to find Burke at the door, but Burke explains that he has been summoned by David and he insists that Roger go and get David, but Roger refuses. And so
they argue back and forth, and Burke asks if he needs to get rough with him again. And
Burke threatens him, and Roger threatens to have him arrested. They yell at each other long enough that David just comes down on his own anyway. Back over in Creep Jail, Matthew finishes tying Vicky back up and pretty calmly announces that now he's going to kill her.
Yeah, I'm gonna kill you now. I can't trust you anymore.
He does try to rationalize to her why he has to, and you really have been pushing it this whole time, and you keep lying to me and trying to sneak away, and I can't trust you anymore, and I can't take you with me because you're just going to keep trying to get away, and eventually you will, and better that I just kill you now. And she promises that she'll play nice now, and he laments, no, it's too late. I've got to kill you. And also, he tells her, they want you dead. And she's like, who? What? Huh? And he says, the ghosts.
Ghosts want you dead. They
Mm-hmm.
do. It is true.
He explains about Bill and Bill coming to say that someone's going to die tonight. And she's like, no, not Bill. Bill liked me. We were homies.
Yeah,
he
was
wouldn't
cool.
say
He
that.
wouldn't want me to die. And he's like, well, the widows do. They need another gal. Like,
He does more crazy
he
monologue.
rambles about killing her and
He schemes about, like, well, let me
killing
think of a
her.
way
Well,
to do it quickly and painlessly.
well, sure, but he's also ranting about how like killing her will make him less afraid. Like, I don't know. It's the ramblings of a wild man.
Anyway, he says he'll be back soon and she'll find out then what's gonna happen. End credits.
Ghosts, they want you dead.
Well, we need to wrap this up. Give us money on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram.
Yes, there will be.
Ghosts want you dead on both.
Ghosts want your money. Ghosts want you dead. Ghosts want you to have a great night. Bye.
Except people listen to podcasts in the morning.
Good morning. Ghosts want you to have a good morning. Ghosts want you to have a good time all the time.
Except sometimes.
When they want you dead. Bye.